Okay.
Say hi to Ashley.
Yes, hi, Ashley. I'm sorry. Another world
It's
here.
okay. It's all good. Aren't we all?
Melissa, is everybody gonna be here tonight, you know?
I haven't heard that anyone isn't going to be here.
Okay, good. Hi, Matt.
I did speak to John. He said he would be here.
You guys hear me?
Yes.
I hear you.
Good, because I was having trouble before. Hi.
Hello.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, it's reflecting on the white paper.
We have quite a few people from WEC. Just so you know.
But I need this link. Let's see.
So that'll be good.
You want
Mm.
that help?
I just can't read it. Oh, we'll figure it out. Hi, Jim. Can't hear you.
Hi.
There you are.
Hi, Jim.
Hi.
What can you do to make this dark? Again.
Get rid of that. I don't want to click that, right?
Yes. Get rid of that.
Hi, Julia.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Very well, thanks.
Peter?
Yes.
So I'm thinking in terms of the meeting, in terms of how it progresses, I would like to not necessarily have to go through my memo again. And I was thinking maybe just ask the applicant, could they report to the board on what they've submitted, from what they've submitted in terms of wetland or environmental documents, or would they like to walk through what they've submitted to respond to the planner's comments? Or I can walk through the comments. It's up to the board.
Okay, Matt, I'm going to bring up.
They didn't receive the memo. Just so you all know, they didn't receive the memo because I knew we were bringing them back and you gave it to me on Monday.
Okay. So, yeah, Matt, I definitely want you to go through your points of the memo.
Okay.
Basically, I'm going to make an introduction regarding this case, and then I'm going to let you go through the memo.
Okay.
If we have time, because, we're only going to give it a 30 minutes or so. The difference being that we're going to have to take up the Wetlands and Watercourse Protection Act in regard to this case. So that's going to be a separate issue. So I know a lot of your comments are regarding it, and they're still valid, but
Well, they get reviewed together, those issues, don't they?
right, because we're now going to have to go through the whole Wetlands and Watercourse procedure.
Right, but you wouldn't be able to go through that procedure without the submission of some of the documents that are being requested in order to be able to assess what the impacts are and assess what the resources are. You really need the submission of the documents that are requested in our memo.
Yes, but the first thing is going to be for the planning board to have site reps and the WEC and others to give us feedback from the site.
Good.
and so that we can determine what is developable and what isn't. So that's going to be the first step.
Correct, but they need to be submitting, a wetland delineation report and a wetland impact report. They need to do some wetland and natural resource. They need to make some wetland and natural resource submissions to the planning board to enable you to assess what the resources are and what the potential impacts are.
Is that appropriate?
Mhm. Yep.
Okay.
All right, we're almost there. A minute to go.
Peter, who is the Wetlands and Watercourse person, the official? Is that Ellen? You used to have that title, right? Didn't you used to have
Yeah,
that-
she's the Wetlands Watercourse Inspector.
You used to
she's
be
the one
that. correct?
She's the one that would make a determination and then send it to the planning board.
And has she sent it to us? Has she made a determination or not yet?
I have not seen it, but
Okay.
The case hasn't already been supplied with wetland and watercourse permit applications?
Melissa would have to answer that one.
I don't know.
Is it-
I,
In the case.
it came in when this was kind of ongoing. So I'd have to look back in the file on what was initially
Well,
submitted.
there's two permits described in the description of the case. One is permit application for minor subdivision to create 5 lots, and then it says and WWP, which is a
Wetlands and watercourse.
permit required to cross wetlands with subdivision and driveway access. So it seems to me there's 2 permits that are being requested from the planning board.
Exactly.
Am I reading that correctly?
That came as a referral from the building department.
From Ellen? Yeah.
Okay, folks, it is 7 o'clock. And let me look. We do have a quorum. Let me look here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes. Hi, Judy.
Hi.
Okay, so I'd like to call to order the regular Zoom meeting of the Woodstock Planning Board for October 15th, 2020. The first order, unless Melissa has anything to add to the agenda at this point.
I have one quick update. We have more credits to approve, but I'll add those when we get to it at the end of the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have the minutes from October 1st. If everybody is okay with them, I'd like to submit them to be accepted as the minutes.
So moved.
All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Communications and announcements. We have the emails from Place 99. From both sides, we had a letter from Leah, the Garden Cafe owner, showing us pictures that they have a very neatly arranged row of garbage cans in the alley, that they have arranged a new carter or new pickup, which will be earlier in the morning, and they've arranged for one of their employees to bring them out and bring them back. And they're looking into a compactor, which is just an economic issue for them, I guess. So seems like they've taken quite a few steps to improve the situation. It's not on our agenda today, so we'll leave it as that. And then, of course, we have the email and the YouTube presentation from Julia Blelock from the NRI, which is excellent. I saw it, and I really hope all planning board members and town board members, members of the public look at it. It's an excellent presentation. Really,
I thought we were going to see it on the 29th.
Yep,
We will.
we will. Okay, so under scheduled business, we have Michael DeSumpis, Planning Board case number 19-1217, and a Wetlands and Watercourse permit application number 19-042. This is a follow-up sketch plan review of a special use permit application for a minor subdivision to create 5 lots from 60 acres, and a Wetlands and Watercourse permit application to determine what can be and what cannot be developed on that lot. So it's located on Chestnut Hill Road in Woodstock, and Barry Medenbach, PE from Medenbach and Eggers, is a representation. So Judy, did you manage to get that?
I have it. I just need to share screen.
Okay. So I just want the whole board to know that this is a critical environmental area. So designated, and it's in the, it's been approved, it's designated on the Hudsonia map, which has been accepted into the town comp plan. This is a critical environmental area. Of the 60 acres, 70% of it is already protected as wetlands, wetlands buffers, watercourses, watercourse buffers, and steep slopes. So,
That's it in the yellow box.
so when we did this subdivision a few years ago and we cut out the 12 acres out of it, we had to, as we always do for any subdivision, we created a new lot and we have to make sure it's a buildable lot. And we looked at the whole situation being all wetlands and so on, and we found one area that was buildable right on Chestnut Hill Road. And that is the site that we put on the map as a buildable lot. So this is a buildable lot with that one lot, or one, not lot, but that one area on Chestnut Hill Road. So the question is going to be, we're going to have, we have to do this in order. And the first order is the Wetlands and Watercourse permit activity, because that will determine what can be developed. Then we can look at a subdivision plan, looking at what can be developed on that lot. So Matt has updated his memo from the first sketch plan review. The first sketch plan review we had, we told the applicant that this is a critical environmental area, it's full of wetlands, and you can't develop through the wetlands and through the wetlands buffers. And never in the history of our town and this watercourse law have we ever allowed anybody to develop through wetlands or watercourse buffers or wetlands buffers. We've only twice, on 2 occasions, allowed going into the buffer when it was absolutely no other way to access the lot. Now, there was a steep slope in a ravine, and it was like 100 square feet of buffer, which we replaced. Those are the only times we have ever gone into a buffer. The critical point of the Wetlands and Watercourse law is, can this be avoided? So it's the first question anybody's going to ask. If you're suggesting that you want to go into a wetland, can it be avoided? Since this lot, we created a buildable lot that already has a buildable site. It's an approved lot with a buildable site. So under those understandings, I would like Matt to go through his memo. And when he's done, or when we're done with this session, I would like to make sure that we have volunteers from the planning board to do the site plan, the site inspection. And I'd like everybody on the planning board that can, I know Judy doesn't want to walk through wetlands, but anybody who can, and we can't do it as a quorum, so it has to be 4 or less going through. And hopefully Jim will volunteer to be the guide for planning board members and WC members also on their site visits. So once we've done our site visits, we will then get the input from the WEC, from the Resources Commission, and we will do our findings and we will present that. Okay, Matt, you got on your memo.
Okay, so this memo was issued on October 13th, and it was reviewing the material that was submitted by the applicant in June. And the reason that there hadn't been a review sooner was that we were under the expectation that further information was being prepared by the environmental consultant, and that the engineers were going to meet with each other and sort of go through some of the items that they knew were issues that the board would need to be informed about. And so it wasn't until I was informed that the item was going to be on this agenda that I realized that the board needs an update based upon the June submission. So we prepared this October 13th submission to the planning board. And so it reviews the June material. And the comments really are a combination of, as Peter was saying, the the wetland and watercourse provisions of Chapter 34, but it's also including the requirements of the subdivision regulations. And they overlap to some extent in terms of, many of the things that you have to establish in the subdivision application regarding compliance with the standards are the same questions that I've asked for in the wetland and watercourse application as it relates to the wetland and watercourse resources. So the memo really does both. And I think what our first comment is that, the town wetland and watercourse law sort of says that we need a jurisdictional review by the Army Corps. And I think that in the meeting between the applicant's engineer and Dennis Larios, there was an indication that, in fact, the applicant's environmental consultant, Mike Nowicki, was, in fact, preparing a notification. So I'm not sure what that notification actually is, but at this stage, any document that's prepared will obviously add some more insight and knowledge for the board in terms of assessing what the impacts are. But that was just number one in the memo, just a jurisdictional review by the Army Corps. And then the next issue really jumps, since that's the most overriding issue, is the wetland issue. We then jump into the subdivision regulation issues. And that, some of the comments have been responded to, but it's their responses are do not really show the water bodies and the wetlands that shows that the non-impact is consistent with the subdivision regulation. So it really just means that the applicant has to describe the circumstances of the wetland in the context of the subdivision regulation. And the subdivision plan does not show or note that. A draft conservation easement, which is mentioned in the applicant's submission as being a way of addressing one aspect of the watercourse law, they mention it, but there's no proposed legal instrument shown. There's not an organization that would be the holder of the conservation easement. So if the applicant is using a conservation easement as a means of demonstrating some level of protection, they have to just add those things. But as Peter was saying, that really wouldn't be done until we knew what the development was going to look like and what the impacts were that were going to be incorporated into the or allowed or permitted.
Just
So
one thing, Matt, just 1 second. When the applicant says that they were going to create a conservation easement, I think they're missing the point. The town already has. All wetlands and buffers are conserved. They can't create an easement. The town already has that. All right, go ahead, Matt, sorry.
So number three has to do with what's required in the wetland law, and that is that there's that the application demonstrates what the resources are, which really necessitates not just the threatened and endangered report that the applicant submitted, but a sort of a full analysis of the flora and fauna and the related habitats. And it doesn't have to be a backbreaking level of detail, but it has to be one that covers the area and covers the resources, because it isn't just the threatened and endangered species and the wetland resource itself, but it's the habitat that are formed for the other species as well, that are part of the reason why the site has been designated by Hudsonia as being, a habitat of significance. So a generalized but overall flora and fauna assessment is something that the board can require under the Chapter 34 if it needs that information in order to make the assessment of the wetlands. What's also needed is a wetland mitigation plan. Now, in the June submission, there was a wetland mitigation proposal made that had to do with the creation of I think it was 20,000 square feet area, but there really wasn't any plans for it in terms of how it would be created or where the construction work would occur. It seemed to us like you'd have to do the work from inside the wetland to get to the area that's being mitigated. And so there has to really be a construction plan for how the mitigation plan would be built, so we can assess whether the cure is worse than the disease. Sometimes creating wetlands as a mitigation plan, it's really more desirable to strengthen the buffers than it is to not disturb and to create a mitigation plan. And there's no evidence that the mitigation plan really, they don't work at a high level, because the work that's needed to build them sort of disturbs the hydrology and disturbs the soil mix, and it creates an environment that isn't really one that is, constructive or helpful for the wetland resource. But that's just an overriding aspect of this. One of the things that's required in the mitigation plan is a demonstration of what you've done to try to avoid the impacts, and that's really alternatives. And in our memo, we propose a couple of different alternatives that could eliminate some of those impacts and try to maintain the fifth lot in the lower area of the site. And there was really no response to that. It was just the moving ahead with lot 5 and the required wetland crossings to access that lot. We feel that in our next bullet item that there should be in this natural resource report identification of the major woodlands and large trees, stone walls, ridge lines, and those are things that are in the subdivision regulations, as well as the preservation of important natural resources also being in the Wetland and Watercourse protection law. We need steep slopes because there are steep slopes on the site, part of what creates all those wetlands. And a separate figure showing site slopes is provided, but it's not in any way related to the proposed development plan, and thus does not show or assess the impact of the development plan on the slopes. They're like two separate plans. And also there's no grading plan or stormwater management plan. But I have to say that in the meeting with applicant engineer Medenbach and the town engineer, there was mention that the stormwater, the SWIP is being prepared. So we're expecting that there will be a grading plan and a stormwater management plans. My next bullet is just repeating, what Hudsonia said about this being a significant site and significant habitat in the town of Woodstock. And I think that's very important. I mean, the town engaged Hudsonia, who is really the acknowledged expert in this thing. And, the applicant's response is really dismissing the comment by saying, hey, listen, we're only doing 5 lots on 60 acres. And we must cross the wetlands. But they didn't adequately identify the impacts because they didn't identify what the resources are. So they couldn't identify what the impacts are. Also, what we found is that in the estimate of disturbance, we asked questions, not because we're absolutely challenging it, but it seemed like in the analysis of area of disturbance, that there really wasn't anything counted in terms of the lots themselves, which would be the construction of the houses, which could be in the buffer, or I don't know if they're in wetland areas, but also the septic system construction and the running of laterals. And like, for example, when they're showing the culverts, and I believe, Barry, you can clarify if I'm wrong, but when they're measuring the disturbance area, say for the culverts going to lot 5, they really measured accurately, but measured sort of the area, the outside area of where the culvert is. They didn't really assess what the...
Okay, so try to interrupt you then just a second. Yes, we did show that as far as the wetlands and the buffer area. We had a separate category of disturbance, but we also show what the overall disturbance is that included the septic systems, the houses, the driveway. It's 3.5 acres.
So it's 3.5 acres of disturbance. Okay, well, that's
Larios, and he thought it was accurate, and he thought it was well detailed.
Okay, good.
Able to see that in the plans.
Yeah, good. So we'll continue reading with that. So 2.5 acres of disturbance, so in between buffer and wetland. Okay, that's good. That's a good number.
It's 3.5 acres total.
Okay, right.
Well, when the planning board members and other members go walk that site and put on boots and walk through the wetlands because it's wet, you'll see that you cannot go in there and only disturb 15 feet wide, whatever they're saying. Bulldozers will go in there and destroy that entire wetland, period. Don't tell me it's only 3 acres. That's not, I've been around too long to believe that. I know what bulldozers do when they get in there, and you will destroy it.
First of all, Pete, we probably wouldn't use a bulldozer for that activity. It'd probably be an excavator, and the excavator would be able to work within the footprint of the actual disturbance.
Okay, well, we're not putting excavators in our wetlands. So please go ahead, Matt.
We would also put up fencing ahead of time on either side, so nobody would.
We're not putting excavators in our wetlands, period. So please go ahead, Matt.
So I already talked about the comprehensive habitat assessment, and I said that the Nowicki had really only done an assessment of threatened and endangered species, but Chapter 34 specifically says threatened, endangered, and rare species, and so it just requires, I had mentioned previously, a more full habitat assessment. Like, for example, only 9 species of plants are recorded for the entire site assessment. It's impossible that there's only 9 species. Certainly, they're not all threatened, endangered, or rare, but there just needs to be an assessment that, you know, categorizes what the work was. The entire biological field work for this assessment was 1 day in December 19th in 2018, which really isn't the best day for identifying, you know, time of year for identifying, you know, identifying many wildlife, which would not really be evident at that time of year. So, you know, so there needs to be some assessment of those resources. I think I've already mentioned, but in more detail, I mentioned in item number 5 of the memo, you know, the wetland delineation report, and that, you know, quotes from the town's zoning, Article 34, Chapter 34, with what should be in the delineation report. So having a map of the delineated boundaries is one thing, but having the report, which does the habitat assessment and talks about the sensitivities, that's really sort of critical, because, you know, in theory, you know, every single wetland doesn't have the same values. And, you know, if for some reason you have to disturb a wetland, you know, it's easier to make the case for it if the values are such as demonstrated by the wetland delineation report, establish that, you know, the wetland values are less critical than other wetland issues could be. So that's what really gives the planning board the ability to sort of make, in some case, qualitative decisions.
I'd like to point something out.
Sure.
This greenish area here is the Hudsonia, but the white with the little stripes on it, that is New York or federal. They
Right,
obviously
federal.
overlap with each other very much, but they are, some of this is not Hudsonia, it's more delineated legally than that.
Right. No, there are Army Corps wetlands, and that's established. I don't think there are any state wetlands.
Judy, can you put that other map up that I sent you? The one from Medenbach and Eckers, their own map.
I'll have to find it and then I can put it up, yeah.
Okay. Sorry,
Um,
Matt, go ahead.
Okay, let me just go back to that.
Well, I'm gonna hang another 10 minutes, and maybe we'll be done. Is that okay?
So this next item,
I have to identify which email from Melissa it was. There are a lot of them.
It's just a map in an email. It's embedded in the email.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know which one it is. That's the trouble. There's a lot of stuff here. Well, keep going with what we're doing, and I'll find it on my.
When you get it and you put it up, you'll see that the map that they have provided is absolutely correct, showing the wetlands and the buffers. And when you see all the buffers around all the wetlands, what you see is upland. And when you walk through the site, you say, "Oh, here's a nice building spot," but it's completely covered in buffer, as is 70% of that site. So when you see that map, you will see that it's totally undevelopable.
Peter, can I ask you a question?
I got it.
This mapping done by Hudsonia, did they actually do field survey work to prepare these maps?
No, your map is much more accurate. I just walked the wetland flags that you have out there, and it's absolutely accurate.
Judith,
Yeah.
it's the email dated August 20th, 11.
August 20th?
Yeah, 11 a.m.
Oh, okay.
You got one last week too from me.
Well, that's what I just found. I
resent it. Thanks, Jim. That was the first one. You're on the ball.
Okay, while you're doing that, Matt,
The sheet 4, if that helps, of the full set.
What time was it? Some reason this is not showing me the dates. It was on the 7th, wasn't it?
I can't get into my email when you're sharing.
I think it's this one. Yeah, it's this one. All right. I'm going to have to do a little fiddling to get this. Let's see if it'll open in a new tab. There we go. That's the one, right?
not seeing it yet.
We're still seeing the other map you have up.
Oh, all right. I'm going to stop share and then I'm going to start share again. There we go. Is that it?
There you go.
Yep.
Now that's.
Thank you, Judy.
There you go. So now you're seeing what is already the lands that are protected. All that in green is protected. All those roads are going through protected lands. You will see the one house proposal along Chestnut Hill Road is the only one that does not need a Wetlands and Watercourse permit, which is the one we put on when we did the original subdivision.
That's lot 2.
That's lot 2. Lot 2 can put a
Right
house
here.
there without going through the Wetlands and Watercourse permit. It doesn't impact it. Every other lot has serious impacts. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the Woodstock Wetlands and Watercourse permit. We're going to do our site inspections, and then we're going to get the feedback from all the various organizations and do our findings and present them so that we can determine what of that 60-acre lot is developable. That's going to be our mission. Right now, this is one of the most significant habitats going, and it's a corridor of significance. And just to make it clear that the people of Woodstock voted for a Wetlands and Watercourse law, they voted to adopt the comprehensive plan, which adopted the Hudsonia mapping. The whole point is Woodstock wants to protect their environmental areas, their wetlands, their watercourses. The town has made it very, very clear that they want to protect them, and we have never before gone through them. And if we did now, every other developer would want to do the same.
Peter, it's Brian. I have a question. The other groups that you mentioned that they have to get surveys from, etc. I don't know how else to ask this, but why don't we let them do the work first? Because given the precedent in our town and what I'm looking at, I mean, unless somebody shows me something.
Well, I agree. Right off the bat, technically, there's over 12.4 acres of wetlands, which makes it a state wetland.
Right.
So the state would have to get involved. The DEC would have to get involved because it's over 12.4 acres. And the state has the same 100-foot buffer as the town does. So the state would be looking at that same map.
So why don't we let them do the work first? I mean,
well, I get your point, Brian, but here's the thing. That the Woodstock law trumps all the others. And
okay. I got
the state could say yes, the feds could say yes, but the Woodstock Planning Board, under our codes, could say no.
Okay.
And that's how that works.
Thank you.
And just so everybody's clear, the decision is made by the planning board. To allow it to happen or not is a vote by the planning board. There's no other entity that has input in it.
Peter, this is Stuart. I have a question.
Sure.
Do we need the reports that Matt identified as being needed in this process under our code? Do we need those in hand before we do the site visit?
Not before, but we certainly need them in hand before we make a rule, before we make a decision. But yes, definitely, we need all that information. But the site visits can start because it's going to take several.
Okay.
We can't have more than a quorum at a time, so same with the Environmental Commission.
Wish I could go.
Well, we'll give you a drone picture.
Yeah.
We're going to have to wear boots because you are walking through water from one end to the other. Yep. There's a creek running through it, but it's all wet as we just walked through it. So you have to walk through it to really appreciate what that wetland is like. And so the site visits are really important.
Can we schedule a site inspection? Because what I'll do is I'll make sure that the roads, we had staked out the roads in the spring for a site inspection. I don't remember when we talked in, I don't know if it was January or February. And then of course the pandemic came and everything else. And
Yeah, when Jim and I walked it, we did find they found a stake that said that was where the road was to go. But no, it wasn't too clear where the lots were. We did find one lot corner, which was the 12-acre lot that came out.
well, we didn't set the corners obviously yet for the new lots, but we did
Right.
set the driveways, and I would like to make sure those stakes are still in place for when the planning board goes out. So is that something that we could schedule tonight, the inspection with the planning board?
Yeah, well, as I say, it's going to take several visits by the planning board to not have a quorum at one time. So we will set that up. In fact, right after this, we'll have Melissa make sure we can get all the volunteers and schedule to go out there and walk it. So, Matt, are you pretty much good with your memo?
Well, there were other things in the memo, but at this stage, I think that going through that wouldn't necessarily be more productive since we already have a game plan laid out. But there are some other comments related to the road, you know, whether it's meets the minor road standards. But talking about that now is really sort of putting the cart before the horse to some extent, because obviously what the development layout is ultimately going to be is going to dictate that. So I would think that the applicant should get this updated memo. They've gotten.
I'm going to email them tomorrow or Monday.
Okay, and then we schedule the site visit and proceed from there.
Right, I agree. Okay, does anybody else on the board have any other questions? At this early stage?
It just occurs to me that, and I'm only halfway being facetious, what they need is causeways, not roads.
Yeah, you can build a bridge, but when the members walk it, you'll see that it's not something that you put a road through. Never have and never will. That's just absolutely a no-no. I mean, both by state and federal standards.
Melissa, I will contact you about how we can schedule my time if anybody who wants me to guide them through what Peter and I saw.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate it.
Yep, no problem.
All right, everybody, and we'll wrap that up and move on. We have other cases in front of us.
I have the others mapped if we need it, but I don't know that we do.
That's okay. That last one was the critical one. That showed it.
Yep.
Okay, so here we go. A couple of less controversial issues. The next one is Norman A. Magnuson and John Hoover and Lucy Drotting Trust. And it's a planning board case number, I'll get the word on here, 20-1221, which is a sketch plan review of a lot line revision application to transfer 4 acres from the Magnuson 22.5 acre lot and add it to the Hoover 10.23 acre lot, establishing 2 new lots of 18.54 acres and 14.3 acres, located in the R5 zoning district at 119 Mink Hollow Road. And this is off of this is between Valley View Way and Lake Hill. We do have a letter from the CEO saying that these changes, both lots will be conforming with the change. Both lots are developed, so there's no new construction planned. If the applicant is here, you could tell us. Is the applicant here?
Lucy is here.
You could tell us perhaps why you want to do this, just so we know.
Sure. So I'm at 116 Valley View Way, and our house is situated in a way that we look sort of towards Norm's property. And there was a time last fall, I think, where he put the property on the market. And so I actually reached out to this maybe is more than you want to know, but anyway, reached out to the real estate agents, asked about buying a few acres so that we would have a little more sort of space. I had also inherited a little bit money from my mom. So anyway, so we just kind of worked it out over time to say that like seemed like this amount of property he was willing to sell, it would be worth his while, and we were willing to, that's what we could
I see.
could
So
buy.
the idea was
So-
to add land to your property. What, you weren't trying to incorporate any features or pools or anything in particular? Okay, so it was just to add some, it's a property switch.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's no planned development. The roads will stay the same to the houses. There's no planned construction.
Correct.
Because I do believe it's the scenic overlay. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Well,
And check that.
yeah, well, there's no.
We're in the scenic, we are in the scenic overlay.
You
Not
are?
sure.
It's 12, it's over 1,200 feet is scenic overlay.
So
All right,
I know
let's-
that
go
the
ahead.
property drops down, so I just don't know if the lower part of the lot in question is in the scenic.
Well, it doesn't matter in this case if there's no construction, so that's
Okay.
really not an issue. Does anybody on the board have any questions about this lot
It looks
line
like
revision?
it looks like it's all in the scenic overlay, but as you say, it really doesn't matter.
Right. Anybody else on the board question about this lot line revision? Okay. I only have the map you showed, and so I'm just assuming that these lot lines are not near any of the buildings, so our setbacks are correct? That you're not creating a setback issue from any of the buildings?
No.
No. Okay. Well, I think we can set this for a public hearing, Melissa, if you got time for it.
Yep. I'm gonna schedule next week or the week after, depending on what governor says the beginning of the month.
Okay.
So Lucy, I'll be in touch to schedule that with you.
Okay, great.
And
Thanks.
I'll double check your maps and make sure we don't need anything else on it, or just little fine tunings.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right. Okay. The next case is Louis Brindis and Deborah Brindis, which is planning board case number 20-1222, which is a sketch plan review of a lot line revision application to transfer 0.53 acres from a 9.04 acre lot and add it to an 11.26 acre lot, establishing two new lots of 8.51 acres and 11.79 acres in the R5 zoning district, located at 5283 Route 212 in Woodstock. And Brooks and Brooks were the surveyors. I have the map. This looks like a very small lot line revision, and it appears to encompass a small pond. So is someone here for this case from the public? Or
Patty Brooks is their representative.
Okay.
Yes.
Hi, Patty.
How are you this evening?
Okay, good. So could you just briefly tell the board why they want to do this lot line revision?
Yes, the Brindises are conveying lot number 1, the 8.51 acre parcel, and they wanted to retain the pond on what they anticipate will be their residential building lot. They purchased the property about 3 years ago and have cleaned it up quite a bit and are now looking to sell a part of it, but they do want to make sure that they retain that pond so that they can keep them preserved.
Okay. Are your lot lines near any setback restrictions that you know of?
No.
Buildings or septics or wells? No.
None at all.
Melissa, one thing is that this happens to be right on the borderline between the town of Shandaken and Woodstock. Do we need to get county? Do we need to send this to the county because it's near the town line?
I'm not sure.
I can't think of any reason why, but it just happens to notice that it is right on the town line.
What I could do is reach out to Robert Leibowitz and send him an email next week and see what response I get, and then I can touch base with Patty, let him know the situation and just get validation. A lot of times he says it doesn't matter, but he'll tell me if we need to.
Okay, yeah, it shouldn't matter.
Sound good?
Anybody on the planning board have any questions regarding this lot line revision?
The only thing I'm wondering about from the map is where's the road access?
It comes off of State Route 212.
Well,
Yeah, if you look on the left-hand side of the map where it says a long blazed line, the highway bounds for State Route 212 are set back quite a bit, but they have 209.47 feet of road frontage.
Okay.
well,
And
maybe
the
I
road-
maybe I didn't get the right lot because it doesn't show quite like that. But I see a flagpole, but that's somebody else's property.
Yeah. Okay, well, again, there's no development planned. This is just a simple lot line revision. So if nobody on the board has any questions, I would say that Melissa could schedule a public hearing.
After I check with Robert Leibowitz, yep, we can do that.
And just for members of the board to know, both Melissa and I said that this is one of the best maps we've ever gotten. We'd like to use it as a model for what we
Thank you.
expect to get.
Patty, tell all your peeps.
I'll pass that along to Giovanni, our mapper. He'll be very pleased.
Did you send it to us, Melissa?
Of course I did.
Well, I didn't see it, so I'll have to look through the mail again.
Yeah, very good. Very good. All right, well then we'll schedule a public hearing as soon as Melissa can, and should be no problem.
I'll be in touch, Patty, probably the end of next week.
Okay, perfect, Melissa. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Okay, in unfinished business, we have a.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
I found it.
You got it? Okay. Unfinished business, make a motion to adopt the resolution for Richard Isaacs, which, if you all remember, was the on Old Forge Road, right in town, where they were changing a studio to a studio apartment, and no one seemed to have a problem with it. We did check to make sure that it was not a change of use or anything that would require any further investigation. So I would like to hear somebody make a motion to adopt the resolution.
So moved.
Okay.
Do we need a full? Do we need a full? Don't mind.
Well, you got a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Hi, John. Okay, so then we also have to make a motion to approve credits for Stewart for attending the using design and density to preserve rural character and enhance downtowns and hamlets.
Yep, and then hold on, then we're gonna lump them together. We're also doing, Brian and Judy attended a webinar, Zoning in America, that was an hour and a half. Now make your motion.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to accept those credits for the board members.
So
Second.
moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Hi, John.
Hello.
So that pretty much wraps it up unless anybody's got any questions or additions. Everybody good?
Peter, on
Yeah.
that, do we need to notify Shandaken?
I
I'm
was
gonna-
asking that.
I'm gonna email Rob Leibowitz at Ulster County and ask him, and actually I could call Shandaken also.
I mean, it's always a good thing to do. There's nothing happening, so it's not
Right,
affecting roads or
right.
anything. It's always a good thing to do.
But I'm gonna double check before I set a public hearing and make sure we're on the up and up.
And since I'm still on, I'll let you know that we did already reach out to Don Brewer, who's the planning board chair in Shandaken, and we thought that it would be cleaner for the record just to get a letter from them. So we will
Oh,
submit
if you
that.
could give me that, that would be great, because then I'll send that to Rob Leibowitz also.
Okay, I'm not sure I'll have it by the time you send to Rob, but because I'm not sure when their next meeting is, but I will,
Okay.
I'll get it to you as soon as I can, Melissa.
Great, Patty. Thank you so much.
I have a
Absolutely.
question. It's really it's a history question unrelated to anything on our agenda, but was part of Shandaken eliminated when they flooded out when they built the Ashokan Reservoir?
No.
Shandaken include, I don't think so. But
I don't think so, because there's a lot in between.
Well, I don't know. Mr. Brooks was standing here next to me and he said, no, it didn't go up that far.
Oh, you know, I just figured out what my
I
problem
was right.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, well,
Thank
my
you, Mr.
problem
Brooks.
There are other SBLs on the part that have the road access. That's why I couldn't figure out how you could possibly have road access.
Yeah, okay.
Because
Okay,
2524 and 2525 are in Woodstock, but the buildings and the road access are actually in Shandaken. Got it.
That's correct, yes.
That's
Remember,
why your map and mine didn't look the same. Now I
we did
understand.
talk about it before we got the application.
Okay.
Okay, so now in regards to this site visit on Chestnut Hill, as I said, we'd like to have as many people on the board as possible go. And Jim, if he's so kind as to offer to be a guide, then more of you could go, because I've already been, and there's no sense, we don't want a quorum. So if you do go with Jim, set it up with him, and do bring some boots. You'll be walking through water. But I think it's really important for everybody to actually see it. It's a real wetland habitat. It's a big one, and it's serious.
I don't need to see it to make a decision.
What's that, excuse me?
I don't need to see it to make a decision.
Well, that's true, but as informed as if you do see it, it really makes an impression on you.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it already.
And
Peter,
yes,
is there any possibility somebody could convince him to make a big donation to the Woodstock Land Conservancy of
Really?
that property?
Really, it's it is a critical habitat, and it does supply our aquifers, which is our water supply, and it's very critical. And as I said before, we have never allowed anybody to blow right through wetlands and buffers. And the simple reason is, can it be avoided? And the only time it can't be avoided, if there's an existing lot of record, that the only way to access it, the only way, if you don't blow a cliff down or a mountain down or a curve, is to infringe a little bit on the buffer, little bit, and then replace that. The question is, can it be avoided? And in this case, as in most cases, it can be avoided because they're trying to create lots. So that's
Isn't it the applicant's burden under the statute to demonstrate that that it can't otherwise be avoided, that crossing the wetlands can't otherwise be avoided? I mean,
well,
that's one of the statutory requirements, so they have to show that.
Right, but when we created that lot, that 60-acre lot, after we took the 12 acres out, we made it a buildable lot. We found a spot that we got perks, that we got Board of Health approval, and where the house could go. So it's a buildable lot.
But
Now,
just
they want
one
to
little
divide
piece
it
of
and
it.
make more lots. Well, that's avoidable. That's avoidable. Right now, it's a 60-acre buildable lot. You can put a house on it.
Oh, I hear you, John.
Ah, I see. Let's put one house on 60 acres, so that's buildable.
You'll have 60 acres, the most beautiful wetlands you've ever seen.
Yep, lots of mosquitoes.
Peter, those of us that are familiar with that lot, I personally, I don't need to walk it. I've been in there. And just no way that I would ever concur with a subdivision there.
Yeah, and as I said, when Jim and I walked it, and I do this every day, of course, we saw upland, and you say, oh, there's a nice piece of upland. You can put a house there, but it's between two wetlands, and the 100-foot buffer completely overlaps it. So there is no area except that one that we showed off of Chestnut Hill that you can actually get to without going through the Wetlands Watercourse permit.
Has that been built on yet? The one that was, no?
No, none of it has.
I'm ready
This
to
one-
vote on it now. I mean, it's a waste of our time.
No, you
Yeah.
can't.
I know
We can't
that.
do that.
I'm saying, as
You
soon as-
don't prejudge the application. They have a right to go through their application.
well, we are prejudging it.
No, we're not. We
We're
can't.
not. We're not. We're
Not
all going to
complete.
look, and we need the input from the Woodstock Environmental Commission and from the Resource Commission.
And we haven't voted on
Very
it.
important. Very important. All right, folks. Well, I guess if you could just coordinate with Melissa and Jim when you can make these site inspections.
Peter, how long do you think is a reasonable time to allot for walking that site? 2 hours?
You don't have to go far in it to realize what you're into. I mean, Jim and I only went in, you know, a third of the way in. We're walking in the water up to our knees, and you don't need to go any further to see what's there. But you got to figure half hour at least to get a feeling for it.
Yeah, and Stuart, if I may, I mean, I don't understand, because that's what we do. We make judgments, and we make judgments based on information and facts. And if somebody is familiar with that lot already, like John is, or I am, or that space, then we make a determination.
But we have to go
group
through.
doesn't. Maybe
we
the
have to
group
go through
doesn't.
all the motions, and the motions are to have findings. We have to create findings that we can present in order to make a approval or disapproval. And it's right in our Wetlands Watercourse law as 260-34K planning board decision. And the planning board can make a decision based on their findings.
I'd like to respond in a little bit of detail to Brian. And I would recommend that all members of the planning board familiarize themselves with Chapter 34 of the zoning code of Woodstock, because it lays out a process that we are required by law to follow. And if it turns out that we've made up our minds and announced a decision before all that process has been gone through, and we've in good faith evaluated all of the reports that are required, the applicant, if he's denied, could go into court and complain that we didn't follow our own procedure and we're therefore arbitrary and capricious, and set aside the decision that has been made without following the process. So you don't want to build in a defect by jumping the gun prematurely and making a judgment on something. And that's why I'm emphasizing we haven't made any decision, we haven't been asked to vote on anything, and we should not until such time as all of these steps set forth in the code have been followed, and that the applicant has been given the opportunity to have a complete application presented and considered by us. I understand that people have impressions and so on, but you don't want to build in a problem that they could set aside what we might ultimately do later on. That's my perspective.
I know. And I think
But they have to answer Matt's questions.
Yeah, and that's fair enough, and I understand that, but it's, and I'm not going to belabor the point here, but, you know, for example, tonight, we get this back and forth when Matt is presenting. I'd like to get away from that a little bit, from applicants coming in and doing that, because it distracts from Matt's presentation, for example. We're gathering information in order to make a determination, and then they should answer in due course. Look at what Matt has presented, and then give that back to us, so then we could evaluate it. And if that's our process, I get it, but I mean.
But they don't have Matt's supplemental report yet, so in fairness, they can't really address what's in there. So, and nor did they object. They didn't object to having to answer those things.
They requested to come back, and, you know, and I honored that. And then we received Matt's memo. They sent the submission in June.
Okay.
As to Stuart's idea that we should familiarize ourselves with this code, I know we have some space on the next workshop meeting that we could do that. But just so you know that on 260-34K5, you'll see it says criteria for denial. The planning board shall deny a permit if it finds that, and it lists the reasons. And if you read those reasons, you'll find where we would rule, how we would rule.
If we deny it.
Right. I mean, of course, the first one of them is there is a feasible alternative for the proposed regulated activity. Well, there is. Anyway.
Not to subdivide.
Right.
Are you done?
Right. So, but if we want, I agree with Stuart. If we want to go over this at the workshop meeting, it's probably a good time to do it.
Well, I will look at it myself, but I
Okay.
don't mind if we go over it as a group either.
And I will too.
Go ahead.
And I will too.
So for the workshop meeting, Melissa has, of course, we have the presentation by Ingrid of the one that they did, and we're going to have a 15-minute presentation on our workshop meeting. And we could include the Wetlands Watercourse regulations in that workshop meeting. And also, one workshop meeting, I'd like us to do the comp plan, because the comp plan has a lot of guidance for us in cases like this. And we should be more familiar with it. So anybody else have any other questions?
No, sir.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much, and
Aye.
Stay safe, everybody.
Have a good night, everybody.
Take it